It's your girl, Professor Cinephile, and I actually wanted to set the mood for this one. I am so I got so much to say. I'm excited. I'm excited. You're here. I'm here. We're gonna talk about The Conjuring. Yes, a new Conjuring film dropped, Conjuring Last Rites, and we are going to discuss this film, but also a little bit about the universe. So, spoiler alert, if you don't want this film ruined for you, because it really did just come out, or if you don't know much about the Conjuring universe and have kind of been waiting to watch the films, you know, come back to this when you get there. But I'm hoping that maybe my review gets you interested in whatever. All right, so cool. Let's get to it. All right, so what do you need to know? First of all, you all know that I love horror, 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 horror. My favorite horror really is kind of spiritual possession horror. I love occult. I love anything that has to do with the Catholics trying to lie about who they are, whatever, right? Fighting demons, fighting possession, all of that kind of stuff. I love those kinds of films. And so the Conjuring universe really fits in really well. And the reason why I keep calling it the Conjuring universe is because there are several films that are a part of this, okay? And they came out in a specific order, but then when you situate them chronologically, they go from about taking place in 1952 to about 1986, I think. Um, yeah, 1986. Okay. We'll just put that there. All right. So you have The Nun, you have Annabelle Creation, you have The Nun 2, then you have Annabelle, then you have The Conjuring, then you have Annabelle Comes Home, then you have The Curse of La Llorona, then you have Conjuring 2, Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, and Conjuring Last Right. All right. So there's a lot of films here. Okay. And these stories are primarily based around the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were paranormal investigators, right? And they have been credited with kind of giving validity, I use that word loosely, to the study of kind of demonology, paranormal activity, and those kinds of things. Like they founded this whole organization in New England for the study of this thing and kind of bringing people together, right? Um, Lorraine was like a medium, or she claimed to be like a medium, a psychic, that kind of person who could like channel spirits, also understand spirits and things like that. So she would be the main person kind of going into spaces. All right. So these are real people, by the way. Oh, I should let you all know. This is supposed to be all based on true stories. Now, the truth of these stories depends on how much you believe that this stuff is real and that it actually happened, right? They have been connected with the Amityville horror, right? And it's really interesting because there's a whole there's a whole school of thought that they were basically scammers and that they were popping up and writing, books to try to just, make money and making up stories to write these books, or that they would attach themselves to these other stories, but they weren't that involved with. Then there's other people who are just like, well, they were doing good work, but sometimes people conflated it and added them to things that they weren't really there, blah, blah, blah. And so that's kind of how their story goes. Whether or not you believe that these were like demon hunters or people who were performing exorcisms and things like that really depends on how much you believe that haunted houses are real, demon possession is real, etc., right? I personally think they were full of shit, but it's just me. I don't trust them. However, I don't necessarily think that the stories of these hauntings are, bogus. At least not all of them. I do believe in possession. I do believe in haunting. I do believe that a person can be possessed. I do believe that a house can be possessed. I believe that objects can be possessed. I do believe that families can be terrorized. I very much believe in things like poltergeists and things like that. I do. I'm not so sure about these two. Okay. But okay, if we suspend disbelief and we just rock with it, then we see that the Conjuring series is really about the different cases that either they were involved with or associated with. And the Conjuring Rites, Last Rites, is allegedly related to the Smurl family, and they were supposedly the last case that these two ever worked on. They claimed that they worked on like over 10,000 cases. Guys, guys. Like, okay. In the film, they say it was 1,000, but even that, come on, come on. The Catholic Church has been like, nah, we ain't got nothing to do with that. The people are lying, they're crazy. Most of this stuff can be debunked. If you watch like the show Evil, right, how they have like a skeptic going in, they have a priest, they have, all these the investigator, all these people like, trying to prove whether or not supernatural things or paranormal things are happening. Kind of like that. And so Ed and Lorraine Warren were often dismissed, they were ridiculed or what have you. But this film takes place and it's about this family. I think it's called Pittstown, Pennsylvania. The real story claims that their home was possessed from about 1974 to about 1987. This story in the film takes place with in 1986 with Ed and Lorraine getting there and them claiming that it had been a few months, right? So, that's the other thing. They fudge a lot of the stories and whatever. So let's say loosely based. Loosely based. Okay. So Conjuring, I gotta say that I have felt like the Conjuring films are enjoyable. I don't find them particularly scary. Maybe because jump scares don't really do much for me, unless they're like really, really good jump scares. I think there were a couple of good jump scares in this one, I gotta say. I think that they improved a bit in that way. If you've heard the Annabelle lore, if you like, you're all in scary dolls or whatever, the Annabelle doll is in there, but she's not part of this thing. If you like the idea of the nun being possessed and all of that stuff, you see a relic of that, but it's not part of this. Basically, this story is we learn that they have a daughter, and the daughter is stillborn, but then comes back to life through prayer. And come on, guys. And then as she's growing up as a child, she has these visions, kind of like her mother, where she starts seeing these like evil entities, and her mother taught her how to make them go away, right? How to kind of run away from them and make them disappear. But they're following her, right? And so they essentially make it that, this family that they're going to investigate, this Catholic family, there's like eight of them in this family. It's multi-generational family. They are being tormented by these three entities, and those entities are being manipulated by a demon, right? What is that demon? We don't know. So we do get some cool stuff, some good like gory scenes and some cool like fascinating, special effects and things like that. I enjoyed that part of it. When the girl was throwing up the blood in the glass, that was actually pretty cool. I thought that the special effects were good for the demons. Those were kind of scary if you get scared by that kind of thing. I do think these were more on the scarier side than some of the other Conjuring films. Let's see, what else did I like about it? I like that there was a little bit more of like a story. We got to see um a lot more emotional connection because it was a more personal story. It's very much like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 when they really start digging into Freddy's past and you learn that his mom was like assaulted by like all these like insane guys or whatever, and that's kind of what created him. We get a little bit more of that kind of emotional connection, heart-wrenching kind of stuff. So that you get some of that. Ed Warren still throughout the Conjuring films you come to hate him because he's like he's so dumb, like he's just whatever, and he's still the same useless piece of in this one too. um I liked that they wanted to wrap this up. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are like, all right, enough. Okay. And that's one of the things. One of the downsides is that when you appear in series like that, you sometimes get typecast. People just come to know you as like I saw an article call them like, horrors husband and wife or mother and father are like packing it up. And it's like, yeah, you know, you want to move away from that. I mean, I think that she's a really fantastic actress, but you can get caught up in being pigeonholed. Same for Patrick Wilson. I had to think, I was like, what have I actually seen Patrick Wilson in before? That's me though. That's not you. That's me. Because all I think of him as Conjuring and Insidious. Like that's and so you're the horror guy, right? So I imagine that they want to move on to other things. Cool, cool, cool. All right. So um I think that this film um, tries its best to make sense of all the other ones, right? And so as they were releasing the Conjuring films, they were out of order, right? Like they were kind of doing them like Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Annabelle, da, da. But when you put them in chronological order, you know, they make a little more sense. But I think that they were really trying to pull it all together. And so like I like when they were in the relic room and they're kind of like, you know, this is all the stuff we've collected from everything that we've done. It was very clear that this was it. In fact, they were, you know, talking about, oh, you know, we're retired. We don't do this anymore. Like a father came and asked them for help, and they're like, we don't do this anymore. You know that, father. And it's funny because Ed was all like, yeah, let's talk about it. I'm ready. And it was Lorraine who was like, I don't want to do this. But again, she's the medium, right? She's the one who's dealing with, you know, seeing all these people and having these visions. So anyway, this small family, 8 people, Catholics, super like religious, whatever, they're being attacked by these entities. At first it's the daughters, and then they're like, you don't believe us. They didn't believe the father and the parents didn't believe them. Then it starts happening to everyone. Every single person in that family has some kind of interaction with these entities. They end up bringing in the media, and this actually happened. So this became a really big media spectacle when this happened. Okay, everybody was going to Pittsdown, but a lot of people thought that they were making it up, and they could have been. Who the hell knows? I wasn't there. Okay, I was a latchkey kid just trying to figure out what my after school dinner was going to be because my mama was going to be working. I was not thinking about this white family in Pittston, Pennsylvania, okay? But it was a media frenzy. They actually had a film made about them called The Haunting, I believe it came, or Haunted House, something like that. It came out in 1991. So this was a pretty big deal. And according to the story, the real story though, Ed and Lorraine really kind of came at the tail end of things, that these people had been enduring this for a while. And then they apparently helped them or whatever. But then there was a family that moved in after them and said they never had any experiences with anything. But we all know that demons attach themselves to families, not necessarily the homes, okay? And in this film, they're trying to say that the demon was attached to Judy, their daughter Judy. I believe their daughter Judy is still alive. She's like, I think like 80 years old or something like that. So that's that. And so that's kind of where this one goes. There's like I said, there's some good jump scares. I think the visual effects are pretty decent. It's set in the 80s, so you know me, I'm the consistency girly. I'm always kind of looking at the props and the styling and stuff. I thought that they did a really good job capturing mid 1980s fashion and style and like home looks, even down, you know, their to the kitchenwares and all of that. I really love when they're good at that because that really takes us back into that moment. So I thought that that was actually really good. Um, but I didn't think it was all that scary. I don't, guys. It wasn't that scary. Like I said, I felt like they were really just trying to tie the whole story up, try to close out the universe, put it up on the shelf, and kind of let it be. I actually think the Nun films were my favorites out of the Conjuring universe. So if we're being honest, I just think that those were the best. Annabelle was cool, was okay. Me and dolls, I don't necessarily get along, me and dolls, but I really thought that, yeah, I thought that that was okay. Um, I think it was interesting that they played in a lot more of the faith stuff. Like we know that Ed and Lorraine were people of faith, particularly Lorraine, but they brought in a bit more of that and kind of challenging their faith. And so, like you see, like crosses get set on fire, books get set, Bibles get set on fire. They were kind of going up against entities that were stronger than anything that they had dealt with before. And they almost lost their daughter again. Like it was a whole big thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a nice tie-up. I think that they let it be. I don't know. It wasn't too much. What do you want me to say? I don't know. It was it was serviceable. It was serviceable. Okay. Conjuring Last Rites was a serviceable horror film. Now, don't take your stuff from me because I love horror films. I'm used to them. They don't really scare me. It takes a lot to scare me. But if you don't like really creepy kind of grotesque boogie people, boogie men, boogie women, or whatever, then you want to skip this one because it was a lot of distorted stuff. I was like, "Ugh, I hate distortion, so it was a lot of distorted stuff. Um, there is a lot of trauma in it. There is suicide, depictions of suicide, depictions of stillborn babies, things like that. If those things kind of trigger you a bit, you may want to avoid this. Anything with like religious horror and torment, that's very heavy in this film. But I liked it. I think it did its job. I'm gonna give it. Now that I think about all the Conjuring, I would put it somewhere in the middle. Like I said, the Nun films for me are up here, so I'll kind of put it somewhere in the middle. Yeah, that was better than that last one. Yeah, let's give it I would probably give it 3.5 hearts. It takes a lot for me to give a horror film 5 hearts. To me, that's Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dream Child. To me, that is the epitome of horror films. The Saw films get up in the fours for me. So Conjuring kind of sits in that three range. I'm gonna give it 3.5. I'll give it even 3 3/4, just because I like how they just kind of tied it all together. You could tell that they were tired of playing these characters. But it is what it is. All right, I'm very interested in what you all thought about The Conjuring Last Rites. Let me know. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, share it with folks, talk about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe. I decided that I'm gonna do my best to post every Friday. Post a review every Friday. I may post some in between because I am getting back more into seeing films. Like I'm going to see another one tomorrow, so I may drop another one. But I'm trying to be consistent with posting on Fridays. So set your alerts, set your timers, and hopefully, you'll rock with me. And thank you for the support, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. All right, take care.